As for inflation, well, consumers are punting big purchases like pools and mattresses because things are really, really expensive. And I'll tell you, I just put in my pool finally for my house, finally complete after a year. And I'll tell you, it was very expensive indeed. And I could see how, yeah, most are putting a big purchase like that on the side. And same thing with mattresses. Mattress is a weird one. I would say like cars, anything, vacations, things that cost a ton, probably being held back at this point. And that's because inflation is still high. We have how many months? 37 consecutive months of 3% inflation. I guess that is a long time. That is a very, very, very long time. If you look at it, that has not happened since what? The last time was in the 80s and 90s, right? So despite the fact that Powell has been doing what he can with elevated rates, I mean, inflation is still high. Everything is still expensive. I don't care what the data says in terms of, oh, inflation's coming down. It's just not the same. 2020 was not that long ago. Seems like it's a long time ago. But I remember 2020 clearly, and it just seems like everything is just much more expensive right now versus just a few years ago. Here's another example of copper prices skyrocketing due to inflation. I mean, everything's skyrocketing due to inflation, right? And that's why Michael Saylor has it right. If it's not Bitcoin, your money is melting. That's exactly right. So, in case you don't know, Bitcoin is the best hedge against inflation. And why is that? Because it out appreciates everything else out there. That's just quite simply it. Inflation causes assets to go up. And one asset that has been proven to be the fastest mover in the last, 10 years, 14 years, 15 years, is Bitcoin. Nothing out appreciates Bitcoin. That is why it is the best hedge against inflation. And inflation woes and shenanigans, they are not going to go away anytime soon. And there's no central bank and no government out there can really stop it either, because the financial system is just broken. Here's something interesting also about inflation. That $1,200 stimulus check, I believe that was the very first one that was given out in 2020 for the U.S. I think the very first one, we had like 4 of them or something. But the first one, the $1,200, had you purchased Bitcoin with it, it'll be 10 times more. It'll be $12,000. Now, how many people actually took the stimulus check and bought Bitcoin? Probably very little. But that goes to show you, nothing outperforms Bitcoin. Nothing. Within a matter of a few years, you could have 10x'd your money had you bought the dip or just simply DCA'd. I mean, come on. Come on. What did gold do a 10x within the last 4 years? No. What did? Probably Nvidia stock. I don't even know if Nvidia stock did a 10x, but there's just very little assets on the planet that can appreciate like this. And that is why, of course, the hedge funds, every single hedge fund basically is involved with Bitcoin, or will be soon, or they just simply haven't reported yet. But out of the 25 biggest ones, okay, you could see how more than half already said yes, and some are substantial. But others that say not yet, again, it could be that they just didn't report yet. Okay, it's really that. It could just be that they didn't report and they actually hold. I have no doubt, if you're like a top 25 hedge fund, your top 100 hedge fund, you would not risk not buying any Bitcoin at this point when all your competitors are. And again, when you look at statistics like this, a lot of hedge funds barely made any money, barely broke even in some of our most bullish years. I still remember in 2021, the last peak when Bitcoin finally started going down in 2022. Well, 2021 was a fantastic year, not just for Bitcoin, but for markets in general, because that was when the stimulus was going and everything was blowing up. But, after 2021 was over in 2022, there was I think Forbes or someone came out with a list of the top 25 hedge funds and whether their performance outperformed the S&P 500 and Bitcoin. And only one surpassed Bitcoin and S&P 500, and that's because they were riding the GME boom. Everyone else was below, and some were even in the negatives. Like, a lot of times you just figure these hedge funds, they must know something, right? They must be the smartest people on the planet. That's why they're in a hedge fund, and that's why they control hundreds of millions of dollars of assets. And they must be making money hand over fist, right? But, like, that statistic just showed me that a regular retail investor can outperform a hedge fund. It's just not the same liquidity, obviously, but in terms of percentage gains, you certainly can. And anyone holding Bitcoin for the last 5 years, 10 years, have certainly done so. It's really easy. Just buy Bitcoin. That's all it comes down to, really. All right, so on Friday, yesterday, we had another massive inflow day, 222 million. So, the entire week was good. We had 66 million inflow, 101 million, 303 million, 258 million, 222 million. That's a lot. If you add it all together, that's $1 billion worth of Bitcoin bought by the ETFs, or you could say the hedge funds, or any other institution out there. They're buying Bitcoin ETFs, causing the funds to buy $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. And that's being removed from circulation. Even Grayscale. Grayscale had a massive inflow the last 2 days on Thursday and Friday. 457 and 472. Remember I said I can't wait for the day for Grayscale to actually turn positive. And it started happening. So now, who is selling Bitcoin by the hundreds of millions? No one. So, I don't know. It's looking good. It's looking bullish. And in case you're wondering, this is what it looks like. Grayscale and BlackRock from week 1 of Bitcoin ETF offering till now. And you could see how, BlackRock is probably going to flip soon. However, since Grayscale stopped selling, maybe if there's more inflows for Grayscale, they can hold off BlackRock for a little bit. But it almost looks like exact mirror of each other, right? Almost to the T. Like, it's a direct inverse relationship between the two. And it makes you wonder, did they plan this all along? Was this Larry Fink's idea from the very beginning to just take all the Bitcoin he can from Grayscale and take more in for himself? I don't know. Maybe.